योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचाम् मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम. So today we begin with Sutra 3.41, which is śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ śrotram. So let us understand the sutra carefully. śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamād. The shrotra is the organ of hearing. Akasha is one of the so-called 5 elements, which is Prithvi, Ap, Teja, Vayu, Akasha. So by Sanyama, on the relation between the two, śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamād. What is the Siddhi? The Siddhi is Divyam Śrotram. So this sutra continues in the same vein as the previous several sutras, where a specific Sanyama is mentioned and the Siddhi arising from that is mentioned. Also, as we have seen in the various sutras of Vibhuti-pada, there are various different aspects of the Shastra that are touched upon. And as part of the Sutra and the Bhashya, we learn the Siddhant, those different Siddhantas, or learn about those different topics as well. So this is a similar one. So for the yogi, on the Sanyama, on the relationship between Shrotra and Akasha, which we say the Indriya pertaining to hearing, and the Akasha, which is often described as ether or sometimes as space, etc., which is the substrate of sound. The relationship between the two. On Sanyama, on that, which is the Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, there is not only the understanding and the Sakshatkara, the direct perception and complete understanding of the same, but also a Siddhi that arises, and in this case, the Siddhi is Divyam Śrotram. Divyam refers to sort of divine, out of the world, supernormal, Śrotram, hearing. So we will see what all this refers to as we look at the Bhashya. So Vyasa begins to explain this. He says, Sarva Shrotranam Akasham Pratishtha Sarva Shabdanam Cha. So, the Akasha, for which there is no direct word, because for space there is another word called Dik. But Akasha is that thing, so to speak, which is all pervading, and it forms a substrate of the Shabda, the sound, and also it is sort of space or ether as it is known as. So this Akasha, says Vyasa, is the Pratishtha, is the substrate for all the Shrotra. So wherever, whatever is the organ of hearing or the Indriya of hearing, so organ of hearing, it doesn't refer to the ear as we have seen earlier. It is the Indriya, the power of hearing, so to speak. So Akasha is a Pratishtha for that. It is the substrate. It is the Adhar. Similarly, Sarva Shabdanam Cha. Similarly, for all the sounds, meaningful, non-meaningful, all the words, etc. For all of that, Akasha is the Pratishtha, says Vyasa. Then he says, Yathoktam Tulya Desha Shravananam Ekadesha Shrutitvam Sarvesham Bhavati Iti. So, as it is said, says Vyasa, that Tulya Desha Shravananam. So, whatever is heard in the same place, in a single place, Eka Desha Shrutitvam Sarvesham Bhavati. The same thing is heard by all the hearers, so to speak, all the organs of hearing. So in one place, the same sound comes, whoever is the hearer. Iti. Tacca etad akashasya lingam anavaranam cha uktam. So this aspect, the fact that in one place the same sounds are heard, whoever is the hearer, says Vyasa, establishes that the place, that space, the akasha, or that particular, that area of akasha, which is known as avachinna by that area, that becomes the substrate. So the akasha is the substrate of both sound and hearing, and that is why whoever is hearing in that same place, the same sounds are heard. So this is akashasya lingam. Lingam is anumapakam, or it is a mark from which we can infer that this is something related to the akasha. This is sort of the power of the quote unquote activity. It is due to the akasha being the adhara or the substrate that this is happening. So that is a lingam, anumapakam. It is a mark from which the role of akasha can be inferred. Anavaranam cha uktam. Anavaranam is also a well-known anumapaka of akasha. Anavaranam as in, there is no boundary, there is no covering. Which means akasha is all pervasive. There is no particular covering or boundary to it. So anavaranam. So these are the anumapaka or the characteristics of akasha. Says Vyasa. So we are learning about the Shabda, Shrotra and Akasha. What are their characteristics and how are they related? Vyasa continues. He says, Tatha amurtasya anavarana darshanat vibhutvam api prakhyatam akashasya. So, akasha is something that is amurta. Amurta meaning it doesn't have form or shape. It is not a thing which has a form or shape. So, murtatvam is defined as parichinna parimanatvam. Parichinna parimanavattvam kriyavatvam va murtatvam. Which means it has a clearly specified dimension or size. So parimanavatvam, it has its own clearly specified dimension or size. Or kriyavatvam, it has its own clearly specified activity such as movement, etc. That is murtatvam. So the usual things that we see, the ball, the tree, etc., they are all murta. The ghata, the pot, pata, the cloth, etc. However, akasha is amurta. Neither does it have a clearly defined size or boundary or shape, etc., nor does it have any activity. So it is amurta. So tatha amurtasya anavarana darshanat. So not only is it amurta, it is anavarana. It has no boundary, no covering. So it is everywhere. It pervades everywhere. There is no limit. So anavarana darshana, due to that, vibhutvam api prakhyatam akashasya. So akasha is what is known as vibhu. It is a vibhutatvam. That is well known. That is famous. So it says vibhutvam api prakhyatam. It is well known of the akasha. So what is vibhutvam? So normally, if you look at philosophy, any nitya dravya, anything that is always present, it is either said to be anu or vibhu. Anu means infinitesimal, smaller than the smallest. Vibhu means the larger than the largest, all pervading. Why? Because anything that is limited, it is said, and we don't have the time to go into the details, but then it can be carved into parts, which means it is put together using parts. So it has a birth, it has an end, therefore it cannot be nitya, it is said. So here the vibhutvam of akasha is being mentioned because it is amurta and also anavarana, therefore it is vibhu. So what is this vibhu means? Sarva vyapakatvam, which means it is present everywhere, it pervades everything. So that is akasha. The space is present, or the ether, so to speak, that which forms the substrate of sound. Because elsewhere in the Nyaya Shastra it says Shabda Gunagatvam Akasham. So whatever has the whatever is this akasha, which happens to be the substrate of sound, is vibhu. It is sarva vyapakatvam, which means it has a sanyoga, or it touches each and everything because it pervades everything. So sarva vyapakatvam and sarvagatam. So that is akasha. So that is also well known. So we are learning about akasha here. Then says Vyasa, sarva grahana anumitam śrotram. Sorry, shabda grahana anumitam śrotram. So he says, why do we say there is something called shrotra? Where has this shrotra come about? Where is this power of hearing that we are talking about? How is that established? So it says Shabda Grahana Anumitam. From the fact that it is able to cognize sound, we can say that there is something called Shrotra. So this is a very much the Nyaya Shastra style of reasoning and inference, where it is being said that we name some entity called Shrotra and we consider something called Shrotra because it can be inferred from the fact that it is able to grasp Shabda, it is able to grasp sound. So Shabda Grahana Anumitam Shrotram. Anumana means inference. So here Anumitam, it is inferred. Then says Vyasa, Badhira Abhadirayoho Ekaha Shabdam Grannati Aparo Na Grannati iti Tasmat Shrotrameva Shabda Vishayam. So it says a deaf person and a person who is not deaf, between the two, one is able to grasp or take in the sound, the other is not able to take in the sound, and therefore Shrotrameva Shabda Vishayam, and therefore it is that hearing, it is the ear, the power in the ear, which has Shabda as the Vishaya. So therefore we can say that Shrotra is the thing, that is the Indriya, which is alone able to take in Shabda. No other Indriya can do that, and it is that Indriya which does it. Therefore, Shabda Grahana Anumitam Shrotram. So Vyasa just elaborated that with an example of the case of the deaf person, the person who is not deaf. Now, Vyasa concludes. He says, śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhe kritasaṃyamasya yoginah divyam śrotram pravartate. So then he says, with the sayyama on the relationship between Shrotra and the Akasha. So Akasha is the substrate of sound. Shrotra is that grasps the sound. So and the Indriya that grasps the sound. Now, by doing Sayyama on this particular relation, the Sambandha, Yoginah, Divyam Śrotram, he gets the divine. So what is this Divyam Śrotram? As we had seen earlier, Yugapat, Sukshma, Vyavahita, Viprakrishta, Shabda Grahana, Samartham Śrotram, Bhavati. That is Divyam Śrotram. So that hearing, which at the same time can also hear something that is subtle, something that is normally blocked for a normal hearing organ, or something that is very far away, all of that, one who is capable of hearing, Viprakrishta Shabda Grahana Samartha. So that particular hearing is Divya Shrotram, that is the divine hearing. So the yogi is able to grasp any sound, every sound, whether subtle or gross, whether nearby or separated, whether close by or at a large distance. So that is the siddhi arising from it. So here there is another background that we have to understand is there is a certain siddhanta of the yoga darshana being established here. Because as per the Naiyayikas, as per the Nyaya darshana, the shrotrendriya is not a separate indriya, it is the same as akasha. So they say that karna vivaravarti akasha śrotram. So it is that akasha which is in the sort of the whole of the ear, or that depression or that cavity of the ear. The akasha is everywhere. That part which is in the cavity of the ear, that is shrotra. Says the Nyaya Shastra. So they say karna vivaravarti akasha śrotram. However, here Vyasa is putting the stand of the Yoga Darshana that says, well, akasha, it is accepted that it is the substrate of sound, but there is also an indriya of shrotra whose substrate is also akasha. So akasha is the pratishtha for that as well. But shrotra and akasha are not one and the same. That is to say, shrotra is not just an aspected part of akasha. It is an indriya. It has a status of its own separate, being its own separate indriya, whose adhara again is akasha. And this relationship is what is being established through the sutra and the bhashya, and further it is said the sanyama on this relationship gives the siddhi of divya śrotram. So this, in another text it is said, or in the Tattva Vaisharadi specifically, sarva śrotranam ahankarikanam api akasham karna shushkuli vivaram pratishtha. So essentially it is saying that all these shrotras, the hearing organs, they are an evolute of the ahankara. Because if you look at the sequence of evolution in Sankhya Yoga, the indriyas come from ahankara tattva. So shrotra also, it says, comes from the ahankara tattva. And because it's where it is situated, akasha is its pratishtha, akasha is its adhara, akasha is its substrate. Tat ayatanam śrotram. So that particular evolute of ahankara, which is the indriya which allows the power of hearing, with the karna shushkuli vivaram, that place in the cavity of the ear as its support, that forms the śrotram. That is the hearing organ. Tat upakarapakarabhyam shrotrasya upakarapakara darshanat. So where is this coming from? Why is akasha the adhara? Because the shrotra is not same as akasha. It is ahankara janya. It is coming from the ahankara tattva. But it is also dependent on the akasha in terms of upakara apakara. Because from the source of the sound up to this particular cavity of the ear, if there is no blockage, only then the hearing happens. So there is a dependency on the upakara and apakara of the akasha. And therefore the shrotrendriya is also has akasha as the ashraya or the substrate. Just like the shabda, the sound itself, has akasha as the substrate. So therefore, this is sort of a deeper, more careful understanding of the shrotra and the akasha. And says Patanjali, this can be a subject for Sanyama, and having attained Sanyama on this, that is when the siddhi, the yogic siddhi of divya śrotram is available to the yogi. So that is Sutra 3.41.
So this Siddhi of the 41st Sutra is mentioning something of the nature of Divya Śrotram. There are two kinds of hearing acts, namely Divya and Adivya. Adivya means that we mortals experience, our auditory organ experiences. That is Adivya. Those are normal sounds, and that is not a Siddhi. To be able to hear is not a Siddhi, because we are given auditory organ, and therefore there are sounds and there are ears to the embodiment, and therefore the sounds are heard. So there is nothing Divyatvam in hearing. However, there is a class of hearing which is called Divya Śrotram, Divya Shravanam, and this definitely is a Siddhi. Now, how does this Siddhi come about? It comes about by a samyama, because we are dealing with samyamatmaka Siddhi, samyamajanya Siddhi, how Siddhis come about through samadhi, and that is samyama. So it is samyamatmaka Siddhi. In the samyama where śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ, the relationship between śrotra and akāśa. Śrotra, as you heard, is an indriya, and akāśa is the element of space. The relationship between the two is object of samyama. It is metaphysical. This relationship between the hearing or power of hearing, shrotrendriya, and akāśa, it is a metaphysical relationship. We don't understand this relationship because it is metaphysical. We only know that we hear. And why we hear, maybe the physiology will be explaining to some extent. But the relationship between the element of space and the indriya, shrotrendriya, is not needed in our normal walk of life. We don't just want hearing, and we just want something to be heard. And that serves the matter of mundane world. But here it is mentioned that there is a relationship, because both are metaphysical objects. The shrotrendriya is metaphysical object. So we should not confuse between organ of hearing and power of hearing. Organ of hearing is something made up of some body matter. We know how the ear is. The ear has a shape. Ear is made up of body matter. So that is not metaphysical. But in philosophy, these two things are mentioned: indriya golakam and indriyam, or the organ of hearing and power of hearing. The reference here is to power of hearing, as you just now heard from Srineet. So that relationship is metaphysical, and since it is metaphysical, it is only object of samadhi, and therefore only object of samyama. Empirically, this relationship cannot be understood. It definitely needs the medium of samadhi, and therefore śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ śrotram. So Vyasa is trying to explain out this relationship. As you heard the first statement of Vyasa, sarva śrotranam ākāśam pratishtha sarva shabdanam cha. Now, the auditory organ or hearing organ or the power of hearing means it hears something. What does it hear? It hears shabda. Shabda is the vishaya. Sound is the object. And the sound object is perceived by the auditory organ. and the power of hearing in the auditory organ. So Shabda and the organ of hearing, the power of hearing, both have Akasha, the Pratishtha of Akasha in them. So that's the relationship between the sound form, which is object of hearing, and the very ear, precisely power of hearing, not the organ of hearing, but the power of hearing. So that's the relationship, because Akasha has a Pratishtha. And as you just now heard from Srineet, the Naiyayikas and even the Mayavadins, they posit that Indriyas are Bhautika. So they establish the relationship as Bhautikatvam relationship is that senses are Bhautika. And this is not the view of Patanjalas, as well as some other philosophers, to name the Ramanujiyas. So they postulate the relationship in the way that these senses, they emanate from Ahankara. And if you recall the cosmology that we discussed earlier in the second chapter, the Ahankar gives rise to elements also. Prithvi, Aptej, Vayu, Akash. Ahankar gives rise to elements as well. And Ahankar gives rise to Indriyas as well. So now you can understand the relationship, that the parental body is one. According to Patanjala, it is Ahankara. From Ahankara Tattva, the elements are emanating. And one of the elements, or the first of the element, is Akasha. And one of the Indriyas, the 5 Indriyas, is Shrotrendriya. And the Shrotrendriya also emanates from Ahankara. So you can understand the relationship, the parental body to Shrotrendriya, and parental body to Akasha is Ahankara Tattva. So that is the relationship which is established by metaphysics of Patanjalas and Ramanujiyas. However, there is a different position taken by the Naiyayikas and the Mayavadins or the Advaitins. Anyway, there is that relationship. That is important thing to take note of. And this relationship is not phenomenal that we can be seeing or inferring on an empirical plane, but it is metaphysical. And about the Shabda, the relationship of the Shabda and Akasha is also described by Vyasa, positing that Indriyas come from Ahankar and Akasha, as well as all elements, come from Ahankar. Therefore, in a statement that you heard, which is the statement of Panchashikhacharya, Yatha cha uktam tudya desha shravananam ekadesha shaktitvam sarvesham bhavati iti tachya etat akashasya lingam is what Vyasa adds to it. So, the mark of Akasha is also discovered by the metaphysicists, such as Panchashikhacharya. And that's why in one location, if there is a sound produced, all the Shrotrendriyas hear the same sound. So what myself and Srineet are speaking, and you who are hearing, all of you hear what we say. All of you hear the same, and it's not that all of you hear differently. It is because of the Akasha, which is all pervasive. And it is because Akasha is all pervasive, important to take note of is that Akasha in all the times has been the same. It doesn't mean that Akasha is changing from time to time, year to year, century to century, millennia to millennia. It doesn't change. Akasha has been constant. Just as we are seeing the same sun for nearly 4,500 million years. And the same sun will be sighted for another 6,000 million years. The Akasha is a Nitya Tattva, Vibhutvam. If not the sun, the Akasha is Vibhu. And therefore it is a great kind of archives of sounds. And towards the final statement of the Vyasa's commentary you heard about, that the Akasha, it doesn't have delimitations. Yugapat, Sukshma, Vyavahita, Viprakrishta, Shabda Grahana, and Sukshma Shabda Grahana, everything is possible. So Akasha records all the sounds, and it almost becomes a kind of archives of all sounds. Which is not the case of other elements. The manifest Akasha, the other elements, Prithvi, will be changing time to time. The water will be changing time to time. The water of river that you see now and the water that you see after a lapse of moments will be with different water. So manifest Panchikruta elements, we see that they are changing. However, the space has a unique position there. Coming to the physical plane, now we are not discussing metaphysical plane. On the physical plane, the air flows. Air comes and air goes. Breeze comes, the breeze comes and breeze goes. The fire comes and fire goes. So this is about the physical world of 5 elements, quintuplicated elements. So Prithvi comes and goes, the up comes and goes, fire comes and goes, Vayu comes and goes, but we don't refer to Akasha comes and goes. So even in the physical plane, Akasha stands out. And then metaphysicists describe Vibhutvam of the Akasha, which is unique. The Akasha has witnessed the time factor, time without beginning. The sun has perhaps seen everything in last 4,500 million years, all that has happened. But before 4,500 million years, we did not have the sun, and therefore the sun doesn't know or has not seen all that has happened so far. Yes, the today's sun has witnessed everything that has happened in 4,500 years. And it will continue to witness for something, the same thing for another 6,000 odd years, million years. Because the sun, which is something which comes and goes. While Akasha, as a principle, doesn't come and go, Akasha holds all records of all times. This is something marvel about the Akasha. It is really timeless. It is Vibhu. It is Anadi. It is Ananta. Eons might come and go. Yugas might come and go. Kalpas might come and go. Akasha in some form or the other remains. So it is more long-lasting element. According to chronology, this Akasha, because after the pralaya that we had, so which can be counted, when was the launch of creation? And before the launch of creation, which is some 1,000 million years ago, some thousands of billion years ago, before that, there was deluge. So this is the first thing, the oldest thing that we have. The space is the oldest thing that we have. Because in pralaya, it would be submerged into avyakta. But once there is launch of creation, chronologically it is said to be Shvetavaraha Kalpa. The Shvetavaraha Kalpa, when it began, Akasha has been the same since that time. So that's the aspect of eternality which should be appreciated. And therefore it has been witnessing everything. It has registered all the sounds. It has maintained all the sounds. It is therefore how the Vedas are revealed at the beginning of every cycle. Because Vedas are said to be eternal sounds. Nityatvam, Shruti Nityatvam. The Shruti, they are called Shruti. So understand the relationship between the Vedas, which are called Shrutis, the Shravana, which is that organ of hearing, the power of hearing, and the Shabda, which is the object of hearing. So Shabdas don't die. This is also a postulation of the metaphysicist. The sounds might end for us, but the sounds are registered somewhere and they remain eternal. So Vedas are eternal sounds and Vedas are heard because this Akasha is containing it. Whenever the Vedas were chanted by the divinity, they have been still retained and therefore they can be heard, reheard, which is reheard by the rishis at the launch of creation. So this Divya Shravanam should be understood as revelation of Vedas which occurs to rishis, Vedashis. You get rishis for Vedas, all the mantras of Vedas are also ascribed to some rishis, Vasishtha Vamadevadi rishis. They heard the Vedas, that is Divya Śrotram. And the Vedas are eternal. So the Vedas that we get now are the hearings of the rishis in our times. And in previous kalpas, the different rishis heard the Vedas, therefore they are often heard and they are maintained throughout the creation phase. And they again appear for every new creation at the launch of every kalpa. So that's how the Shabda Nityatvam, the Akasha holds on to them. So that's Divya Shravanam is so important in our tradition, our philosophies, our religion, and therefore the Divya Shravanam has that paramount importance, and Patanjali is referring to Divya Śrotram, and primarily he is pointing out at the Vedas which have been preserved from time without beginning, time immemorial to time without beginning indeed. So that's the Divya Śrotram, Divya Shravanam. And the uniqueness of the element of Akasha is that, as you just now heard, if anything is Sukshma, it is heard. That is Divya Shravanam. Anything vyavahitam, anything veiled, that is heard. Anything vipraprushta, very remote, it is heard. So that's the typical thing to be noted about the shabda as an object. So we should try to ponder over the objects such as shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, and how shabda is outstanding and it stands out. So also the Jnanendriyas, the Shrotrendriya stands out, the Shabda stands out, Akasha stands out. This Akasha cannot be veiled and covered, enveloped, which you heard in the commentary, which the mention was made by Vyasa, that Akasha cannot be veiled. Anavaranam cha uktam. It cannot be enveloped. Other things are enveloped. So therefore, we know all the things go to latencies. But Akasha, anavaranam cha uktam. Anavarana darshanat, vibhutvam. Therefore, the vibhutvam, therefore it is all pervasive. So, otherwise, see, when we have to have some extraordinary manifestation of the object of sub-shabda, we have to record the sounds. Then we record the sounds, and posthumously we can hear those sounds because they are maintained in a device called a sound recorder. So we also try to record the sounds because we cannot otherwise reproduce that sound once again. But the recordings are held by the Akasha Tattva. We need a recorder to preserve the sounds. Whereas the Akasha preserves the sounds, which is it's a very natural function, natural manifestation. So there is Divyatvam in Akasha. It is not just one of the five elements. It stands out. It is first of the five elements. All other elements are born out of Akasha. They are generation of Akasha. So this you should recall, which was discussed while discussing the metaphysics. So Akasha has a distinct position, Shabda has a distinct position, and Shrotrendriya has a distinct positions. So all our revelations were heard by the rishis. And here the relationship, etc. is mentioned, and by that samyama, the ability for divya śrotram comes up, which is not there for mortals. We have limitations in our hearings. Unless we preserve the sounds, we cannot be maintaining the sound. The sound cannot be saved otherwise. But Akasha has a unique place, Shabda has a unique place, Shrotrendriya has a unique place, and this relationship in those is only realized by samadhi process. And therefore, śrotrākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ śrotram is a sutra. And this siddhi has a great importance in our tradition because our Vedas are shrutis. Shrutis are something which were heard all the time in all creations. The same thing was heard in all creations. Not they were changing from time to time and kalpa to kalpa. Yatha purva kalpam, the Vedas come back to rishis who are kranta drashta, who get the audition of Vedas because they are eternal sounds. Vedas are eternal sounds. It is not that they come and they go. Like our sound will come and will go. Those sounds don't come and go. They are eternal sounds. So that's a unique relationship. It is only in the domain of metaphysics. And therefore, this particular sutra has great importance in our tradition because we all uh, believe and acclaim and hold aloft the Vedas and Vedic postulations and Vedic Shrutis. So Shruti, Shravanam, Śrotram, Akāśa, Shabdam. So these are very important things which are basis of the Vedic philosophy, the Vedic religion, and Vedic postulations. So therefore, this sutra has a unique place. Okay.
Now we move on to 3.42, which says, which is in a similar, on a similar topic. So it says, kāyākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ lagutula samāpattescha ākāśagamaṇam. So another sort of a kriya rupa siddhi. So it says, kāyākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ. Or, okay, so here there are two alternatives given, because it is said chakaraha vikalparthakaha. So the cha is not and, it is or. So by the sanyama on the relation between the kayaha means the body, the shariram. The relation between that and the akasha we've just heard what it is. By sanyama on that relation, or lagutula samapattehe, from the samapatti of something which is very small or something which is light, like a thread of a cotton. So the samapatti on that, the siddhi is ākāśagamanam, the ability to move freely in space, in the akasha. So that is the siddhi. So this is explained as kāyākāśayoḥ laguniva tuladau krutasayyamaha samapattim cha samapattim chetasaha tatstha tadanjanatam labdhva iti. So what is samapatti? It is tatstha tadanjanata, like we had seen in the very first chapter. So by getting the tatstha tadanjanata through samapatti, which means the chitta has, it is the alambanam, the cognitive support of the chitta is completely on a very small and light thing, like the lagutula mentioned here, the thread of the cotton, or further in this parampara, lighter and lighter, as we will see. So the chitta gets through that cognition and samapatti the form and shape, and further is also colored by that, so tadanjanata. So through that, or directly through the samapatti on the kaya and the akasha sambandha. So from these two approaches, the siddhi is ākāśagamanam, the ability to move about freely in space. Vyasa elaborates further. He says, yatra kāyaha tatra ākāśam tasya avakāśadānāt kāyasya tena sambandha praptihi. So wherever there is kāyaha means the body. Wherever there is kāyaha, the akasha is also there, because it is the akasha which gives the place, the space for the kaya to exist there. And therefore, the two have a relationship. There is a sambandha. That's why it says tena sambandha praptihi. Tatra krita sayyamo jitva tat sambandham. So having done sayyama there and having attained jitva means having, literally it says having gained victory on that sambandha. So the sanyama is a process where a certain thing is mastered, because one gets a complete understanding and direct realization of it. So having understood or having done the sanyama, attained the sanyama on that relationship, or it is lagushu tuladishu, the lagushu tuladishu आपरमाणुभ्यः samapattim labdhva jita sambandha laguhu. Or it says having attained samapatti on something which is very small and light, like the thread of a cotton, right up to aparamanushu, so right up to the smallest particle, which is referred to as a paramanu. Very often in English we say atom, though that does not directly refer to the what physics refers to as atom, because that has been further said to have smaller particles, as we know. But up to the smallest particle, it is aparamanu samapattim labdhva, having attained the samapatti. We have seen what samapatti is, or you can refer to the first chapter, and there is sort of 4 gradations depending on whether it is a sthula or a sukshma subject, etc., vitarka, vichara, and so on. So what happens? The lagutvam, the lightness, so to speak, which enables one to move about in space, that is the siddhi. So laguhu, says Vyasa. And then further he says, lagutvacha jale padabhyam viharati. So because now the yogi is light, or he has attained the laguta, he is able to walk directly with his feet on water. So the ability to walk on water, jale padabhyam viharati. Tatastu urnabhitantu matre viritya. Furthermore, he is even able to move about on something like the strand of the spider's web. Urna nabhi tantu matre. So on the very strand of the spider's web, the yogi is able to move. It says through that lightness which has come as a siddhi. Rashmishu viharati. Furthermore, on the rays of the sun, he is able to walk on those, so to speak, or move about on something as light and delicate or as subtle as the rays of the sun. And tataha, from there, yateshtam ākāśagatihi asya bhavati iti. And then further, he is able to move about as he wishes in space. So that is what it has been said. Now there is one thing to notice is, in the first one, there is a direct sanyama on the vishaya given, which is kāyākāśayoḥ. The sanyama is attained. Whereas the second one, there is a certain parampara. It starts with something like tuladi, or the tula, which is the thread of the cotton. Further, it is up to the paramanu, it is said. And as examples is given the strand of the spider's web, or further the rays of the sun, etc. So there is a parampara through which the siddhi develops in that alternative of samapatti on lighter and lighter things. Whereas the first one is a direct sanyama on the kaya akasha sambandha that gives the siddhi of shagmanam. And of course we hear in the Puranas and elsewhere the various rishis and yogis or Narada who can appear anywhere, move about anywhere, and so on. So that is what is being referred to. The siddhi here is referred to, and the means is also given as kāyākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ lagutula samāpattesya ākāśagamanam. So that is Sutra 3.42 and its bhashya.
So the 42nd Sutra speaks about ākāśagamanam. Ākāśagamanam is floating in the space and moving in the space. So there are 2 ways, as you heard just now. kāyākāśayoḥ sambandhasaṃyamāddivyaṃ. By samyama, on the relationship between the kaya and akasha. You just now heard that the kaya will be able to manifest only when the space is provided, because the kaya, the body, has a physical dimension, and if it has a physical dimension, it needs a space. And the very physical body and physical form of space, the relationship can be understood by we mortals. And that's why we often say about, give me space. I want to have space. If there is no space, you will not enter. So the body needs the space, even as a physical body, and the reference to physical space. You can understand the relationship. And etymological also, avakāśayati iti ākāśaḥ also has been mentioned in Shastras. The space is not just the space. The space is that which gives the space. So that the space should be understood that way. The space is that which gives the space. And this giving the space is so important for kaya, human body. If there is no space given to human body will not manifest and come into existence. So there is that relationship between, again, Akasha, which we discussed in the previous sutra, and here as well, the sambandha between Kaya and Akasha. There we discussed the sambandha between Shabda and Akasha, and now we are looking at another form of relationship between the two different aspects. However, Akasha is common, Kaya and now Akasha. They are Shrotra and Akasha. So, the samapatti on their relationship. That is one way of Akāśagamanaṃ. And the other one is Lagutula Samapattesya. The samyama on very light things, extremely light things such as fiber of cotton, etc., which float in the space. We see that they are floating in the space and they are moving in the space. The light things move in the space. So, by samyama, yogi will get that lightness, lagutvam. How? Tuladishu. Like tuladi, that means the fabric of cotton. So with that lightness, samapatti on those light objects will also give the ability for Akāśagamanaṃ. And then yogi becomes so light that he just now heard that he could be walking over the surface of water without getting submerged into water. So he becomes so light that he can walk over the water. He can also walk on the spider web. The yogi will become so light in his physical form that he can be also walking over the spider web. So, therefore, the Akasha Gati happens, Akasha Gamanam happens, and once you are able to move yourself in an Akasha, you have great privileges. In a little lighter mood, it can be said this way, that the birds are migrating thousands and thousands of miles from continent to continent, from countries to countries, and because they are going to come Akasha Margatvena, from Akasha Marga, nobody questions them about their visa, permits, etc., immigration formalities, whereas we people have to go for immigration formalities. Visa must be had. The birds don't apply for visa. They might travel from Russia to South Asia, from Latin America to South Asia or Northern Asia. They will not need all those things. So there is a privilege in Akāśagamanaṃ. So, like birds freely fly, they don't bother about the boundaries, because Akasha doesn't have the boundaries. Although we, for our convenience, we speak about the space of every country. But otherwise, there is no space mapping. So the birds can freely move. So Akasha Gamanam has that privilege that you don't have to bother about all these formalities and you are not obstructed. If you are going to travel Akasha Marga, by Akasha Marga, by this Siddhi, by becoming light, buoyancy, and by Samyama, the power comes up. So this sutra is speaking about the relationship between the Kaya and Akasha. And the fascinating Siddhi, you heard the rishis, the Muni like Narada Muni, he would be moving in all the three planes. From wherever he is, he will just commence his journey by getting into the space. So, Narada Rishi is known for Trailokya Sanchari, and these Siddhaganas also. They are Divya and they are Sancharis, Trailokya Sancharis. Deva Devatas are Trailokya Sancharis. So that's the Akasha Gamanam. Akasha is not only on the planet Earth, Akasha is also outside, and that we call as Avakasha. So, the space is such a thing which is all pervasive. Everything is in space. Sun, moon, earth, planets, the galaxies, everything is in space. Space is holding all of them. So that's the unique aspect of space. The more said is always less about it. Such is the principle of Akasha in metaphysics. Here the kāyākāśayoḥ sambandha means Akasha Gamanam. Akasha Gamanam means not only you fly in the space of the planet, you can also have interplanetary movements, which is the case of Narada Maharshi. So that's a fascinating siddhi called Akasha Gamanam. Okay.
Okay. So we'll stop for today. Let's recite the slokas and Guruji. Stop for today. Vaijñānikam pravaktrutva आसनेषु कलाविदम् योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञम् वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुम् योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यत्प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्यगुरो तुभ्यं